"It hurts, I can't close my leg," the giant virgin bride said. The rancher reached down and found. The wind crawled slow across the dusty plains as the wedding guests whispered among themselves, unsure why the towering bride suddenly froze beside the old wooden altar. Her veil trembled, her breath cracked, and she leaned heavily on the snow-white mare she had ridden in on. She was nearly 6'5", a gentle giant of a woman known for her strength and kindness, yet now she looked as fragile as a wounded fawn. The rancher groom, standing a few feet away, saw her pain before anyone else did. Her face contorted, and her voice escaped in a trembling cry that broke the festive air and fell like a stone into silence. "It hurts, I can't close my leg," she whispered, gripping her gown as though it weighed 1,000 pounds. Guests gasped, some believing her nerves had gotten the best of her. Others whispered cruel assumptions. But the rancher, rough-handed but soft-souled, stepped forward without hesitation. His weather-scarred boots scraped the wooden platform as he reached her side. He gently set a hand on her arm, noticing how she trembled not from fear but from real, deep pain. He had seen horses in agony, calves caught in barbed wire, and he recognized the same silent panic in her eyes. Whatever hurt her wasn't small. He crouched beside her despite everyone watching, ignoring the murmurs. Carefully, he reached down toward the hem of her gown, not for anything improper, but to see if she was injured. His fingers brushed the fabric, and he felt instantly the rigid tension pulling through her thigh. Something was stuck, something wrong. When she tried to shift her weight, she winced so sharply that he felt the pain like a stab in his own chest. Without lifting the dress high, he checked the lower edge safely and discovered what everyone else missed. An iron-thin thorn from a broken wagon wheel had sliced deep into her inner thigh earlier when she arrived, and now the wood splinter lodged further inside, making movement impossible. Her towering frame masked the injury, but her body was locking from shock. He met her eyes, seeing the silent fear she tried to hide from everyone, including him. She wasn't afraid of marriage, she was afraid she might collapse. The rancher stood, his hand steady on her back, telling her in a low voice that he wouldn't let her fall. The preacher paused, unsure what to do, while the crowd shifted nervously. The bride bit her lip, breathing fast, trying to stay strong, trying to pretend she was fine. But the rancher knew better. "Lean on me," he whispered, guiding her gently away from the altar. The crowd parted like river water around stones. He supported her massive weight with surprising ease, leading her behind the barn where no eyes could pry. Her breath shook. Her veil fluttered in the harsh sun. She apologized repeatedly, ashamed, but he hushed her with tenderness, telling her pain was never something to hide. She had spent most of her life hiding her towering height, her strength, her feelings, now she hid her suffering too. He wouldn't let her. Behind the barn's shadow, he knelt again, examining the tear in her gown's side seam where the splinter had embedded. She flinched each time he touched near it, but he kept his voice slow and reassuring. The wound wasn't trivial. If she forced the leg shut, the wood could break off deeper. His jaw tightened. She needed immediate help, not a ceremony. She insisted the wedding continue, that she didn't want to embarrass him. But he told her one truth that made her eyes glisten: "I didn't come to marry a dress. I came to marry you. And right now, you need to breathe." He tore his sleeve clean off and wrapped it around her thigh, a soft bandage to stop more bleeding. She clung to his shoulder, feeling something she had rarely felt: safety. For all her intimidating height and strength, she felt small with pain. And the rancher didn't fear her size, didn't mock it, didn't shrink from it. Instead, he treated her as someone precious. When he lifted her into his arms, despite her towering frame, she gasped, stunned someone could carry her with such resolve. He didn't carry her to the altar. He carried her to help. The rancher carried her into the quiet shade of the ranch house, the one he built with his own hands. The old wooden door creaked as he kicked it open gently, refusing to set her down until he found a place soft enough not to worsen her pain. He laid her on the long couch near the window, sunlight filtering across her pale, worried face. She tried to sit up and apologize again, but he placed a steady hand on her shoulder, telling her softly that nothing she did required apology. He could see her fighting tears, not because of the pain alone but because she feared she had ruined the day he waited so long for. He brought warm water, cloths, and his medical kit, a small box he kept for injured horses and ranch hands. She watched him move, calm, focused, gentle despite his rough appearance. When he knelt beside her, she lowered her gaze, embarrassed by her size, her pain, and the fact that he had to care for her like a wounded creature. But he never looked at her with pity. Only concern. Only devotion. He waited for her nod before lifting the side of her gown just enough to see the wound properly. She tensed, trembling, but his voice soothed her like rain on hard earth. "I'll be careful. I promise." The thorn was deeper than he expected, lodged at an angle that forced her leg open painfully. No wonder she couldn't close it. Her skin was bruising around it, the muscle inflamed. With slow hands, he cleaned around the wound, each touch sending a jolt through her body. She clenched the couch, tears slipping silently, but he kept whispering, telling her to breathe with him. When he finally grasped the edge of the thorn with tweezers, she squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for agony. And yet, he paused, watching her breath, waiting for the moment she felt ready, refusing to hurt her more than needed. When he pulled the thorn free, she gasped sharply, her entire body tightening before collapsing into relief. Blood welled, but he quickly pressed cloth to stop it. She trembled uncontrollably, not from fear anymore but from how much pain she had been holding in just to stay strong. He bandaged her thigh carefully, wrapping the cloth with the gentleness of someone protecting a fragile secret. When he finished, he sat back, chest heaving slightly, as if he had taken her pain into himself. She blinked, finally looking at him through softened eyes, almost disbelieving how much effort he had put into easing her suffering. "I ruined everything," she whispered, voice cracking like dry wood. "Our wedding, everyone must be talking," but he shook his head immediately, leaning closer, staring straight into her eyes with a confidence she had never known from any man. "You didn't ruin anything," he said firmly. "A wedding can wait. You can't." His words struck something deep within her, a place where she had long felt unworthy, awkward, too tall, too strong, too unusual. Yet here he was, choosing her over the ceremony, choosing her pain over his pride, choosing her completely. As the sun dipped lower, the guests grew restless outside. Some judged, some worried, some left, but the rancher didn't step outside to explain. Instead, he stayed by her side, giving her water, adjusting her bandage, brushing the hair from her forehead. She watched him with growing emotion, realizing she had never been cared for like this in her entire life. Her height and strength had always made people assume she didn't need gentleness. But he saw right through that armor and treated her as someone worthy of tenderness. And slowly, her pain faded, not fully, but enough to breathe again. She asked him to sit beside her, and when he did, she rested her head lightly against his shoulder. It was the first time she allowed herself to lean on someone physically and emotionally. He wrapped his arm around her carefully, mindful of her injury. For a while they sat in silence, listening to the wind slide across the empty ceremony field outside. She finally whispered, "You should have married someone easier, someone who doesn't break on her own wedding day." His grip tightened gently around her waist. "I didn't fall in love with someone easy," he replied. "I fell in love with someone brave." When dusk settled, he helped her stand slowly, supporting her with both arms. She tried closing her leg gently, and to her shock, she could. Not fully, not painlessly, but better than before. She looked at him, eyes wide, as if he had performed a miracle. But he only smiled that half smile he always gave when he cared too much. He walked her to the porch, where the lanterns glowed softly. The preacher remained, waiting patiently. A few loyal friends stayed too, hopeful but uncertain. When they saw her walking, limping but upright, they gasped with relief. The rancher asked her if she wanted to rest more, postpone everything for another day. But she shook her head, lifting her chin with quiet determination. She had spent years believing she was too much, too tall, too awkward for love. But today proved she wasn't too much, she had simply never met a man strong enough to stand with her. And now he stood beside her, steady and certain. She took his arm, leaning slightly but proudly, and they stepped back toward the altar, the sunset painting gold across the dust. This time, when the preacher began the vows, she didn't tremble. She didn't fear collapsing. She didn't worry about the whispers. She looked only at the rancher, the man who knelt for her, carried her, cleaned her wound, and chose her pain over his pride. The moment she said, "I do," her voice didn't crack, it rang strong, echoing across the quiet field. And when he said it back, his eyes glistened, because he knew this wasn't just a ceremony. It was a promise to protect not just her body but her heart, her fears, her hidden softness. After the vows, he didn't kiss her immediately. Instead, he touched her bandaged thigh gently, as if honoring her struggle, then cupped her face with both hands. She leaned into his palms, overwhelmed with emotion. When he finally kissed her, it was slow, steady, and deep with gratitude, not for the wedding, but for the woman she was. The guests cheered softly, understanding they were witnessing something real and rare. She lifted him slightly off the ground with her strength, laughing for the first time that day, and he laughed too, clinging to her shoulders. That night, he carried her again, not out of necessity but out of love, across the porch and into the home that would now be theirs. Her legs still hurt, but it no longer felt like shame. It felt like proof of how deeply he cared. He laid her gently on the bed, tucking a blanket around her, and sat beside her as she drifted into sleep. She whispered one last trembling sentence before her eyes closed, "No one ever stayed for me before." He brushed her cheek with his thumb. "I'm not going anywhere," he replied softly. And he meant every word.